The House Education Committee will come to order. Will the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Colazar.
Here.
Representatives Churches.
Present.
Shannon. Stone. Weiss. Here. Glanville.
Present.
Conlon.
Here.
Edwards. Wagella.
Here.
Green.
Here.
Markman.
Here.
Paquette.
Here.
Wenzel. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 10 members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Representative Conlon moves to approve the minutes from the June 27th meeting without objection, so ordered. Today we're going to be taking testimony from a variety of individuals and groups regarding school safety. And I do want to make a point before we start this conversation that while we have many voices here, we certainly don't have every voice that could speak to this topic here. At the end of the day, it is at most an hour and a half meeting. So I anticipate this just being a continuation of a conversation that has been had and will continue to be had. And I definitely think there are more voices we need to be hearing from. But I am very appreciative of those who made the trip here today and those who are going to talk about all of the work they've been doing in this space. And to start, we'll be welcoming up Representatives Breen and Meerman, who are going to talk about their work on a bipartisan school safety task force. So, representatives, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee. We appreciate the time that you're giving us today. You should have in front of you a report from December of last year that our task force has put out. I'm not going to reiterate everything that's on here, but I think it's important to have some background. As you see, we have two people up here. One of us is on one side of the aisle, one of us is on the other. And it's helpful, I think, and a good example of governing in general that despite where we might sit in the chamber, we are in total agreement on a lot of things that are before you as far as school safety. We know that violence isn't limited to gun violence. It's not limited to schools, but we began this journey with an objective to keep everybody safe as best we can. And a lot of things can't be legislated. You can't legislate good parenting. You can't legislate that you must feed your child every day, 3 times a day, plus snacks until you die, as many parents have found out. But what we have found out is there are certain keys to mitigating violence. One of those is, and this might sound, some people don't like this term, but it's social emotional learning. We know that our kids cannot academically learn unless they feel physically and mentally secure. So the other thing we learned, I mean, we knew this, but now we really know this, is that with all these varying needs of the districts across the state, it's very rare that you can come up with a one-size-fits-all solution. There are a few instances in which that would be appropriate, but we can't say that what's going to work for Detroit Public Schools is going to work for Coopersville. That's not the case. And even before the horrific events of Oxford, and I would like to note that we have some families from Oxford here in the room today, and I want to thank them personally for their advice and their advocacy, and I also want to give a promise that we are all going to try to do better. But even before Oxford, we have seen Columbine, we have seen Parkland, we have seen Sandy Hook. And for me personally, if I never talk to the parent of a murdered child again, I know I have done my job here in the legislature. So what we have put together is a package. I'm not going to get into the details of the bills, but a majority of the package that we put together focuses on what I would like to say is one of 3 buckets. And the 3 buckets are essentially prevention. How do we stop violence before it walks in the door? Mitigation and response, or how you respond in the moment of a tragedy or an emergency, and then recovery. And so a lot of the bills that we have set forth primarily have to do with how you respond in that moment. Physical security improvements, training, the use of common terminology so that when you have multiple first responders coming to a school, that they all are using the same vernacular so they can respond in the best way to save lives. And our goal is to basically outline the best practices for schools, to say these are the best policies, these are the best procedures, these are the things that you should strive for, but also here are the different buckets of money you can go to in order to achieve those needs. Some schools are light years ahead. I come from Novi. They are already using Zero Eyes, which is AI technology that would immediately detect a firearm. They're already using Raptor, which is to screen visitors. And Rep. Meerman and I have met with a plethora of vendors, but we've also met with a lot of parents, teachers, counselors, psychologists, school administrators. I think we've met with almost everyone. And this is what we came up with as far as this package, but we know there's more work to do. I gave those 3 buckets, but we also sort of fell upon 6 areas of policy that school safety needs fall into. The first one is mental health, and that includes affordability, accessibility, and making sure that educators across the board have the support and services that they require as well. Second bucket was school hardening, which is structural security improvements. The third would be more along the lines of data, processes, and procedures, and that has to do with accessing data, analyzing data, standardizing protocols, threat assessments, and procedures. The fourth bucket would be staffing and personnel. That includes retention, recruitment, training, educators, and staff. There's also education, a 5th bucket, education and public service information, the integration of programs like OK to Say, Know the Signs, social emotional learning methods, behavioral awareness, and then the last bucket, which is probably the most contentious one, has to do with firearms and criminal justice. So each of the policy areas we believe is sort of encompassed in at least one of the bills, but again, there's still a lot more that we have not legislated. I'm happy to say that in last year's budget and in this year's budget, we made a lot of strides. There's been a lot of money allocated towards the school health centers, those are wonderful resources for kids that whether they break a finger or whether they need somebody to talk to, there's somebody that's going to be right there on campus. There's about 100 plus of those throughout the state, and there was some more money allocated towards those in this year's budget. There is a large increase for special education and at-risk students. One of the biggest things, I think, was over $320 million for mental health and student safety grants. That's where schools can apply for a school safety grant for almost any need that they see, whether it is a program for student mental health or if they need a school resource officer. That money is there for them to use that will fit their own needs. I would like my colleague, Rep. Meerman, to talk about some of the other things that I know were not put into the budget. There's also other bills that aren't part of the package, such as one pertaining to recess. And again, noting that there are a lot of vendors out there, every school is going to have, I believe, a choice of what is going to suit their needs best, whether it's an alarm system or other companies like Haystacks, which helps coordinate emergency plans, security assessments, school mapping, reunification plans. I found out some of my districts don't have reunification plans. Those are things that I believe we do need to standardize and make sure that every school has a reunification plan, and that's something that will be addressed in the legislation that we've got pending before us. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague to talk about some of the things that we haven't been able to do or some of the things we hope to be able to do.
Thank you, Rep. Breen. I really appreciate the opportunity to stand here before you and speak to this and to those in the audience and those that are watching as well. Obviously, this is a tremendously heavy topic, but we as legislators are tasked with doing just things like this. And so it has been on my heart since Oxford, and it continues to be at almost a daily occurrence for me to think about what happened, and I'm not even a parent who has lost someone, and I think we'll hear from some of those as well. So we as legislators, I think, it's incumbent upon us to look to see what we can do to keep and do what we can to make our schools a safer place for our children to be. And in that vein, I'll be somewhat brief in my comments, is to me the connecting dots that we need to try to make sure happen. And it might be from okay to say if a student sees something going on, how do they know? How do they know that okay to say is there? It might be the lunch lady. It might be the teacher. It might be the school bus driver. Do they have the right training for them to understand where's the next person that they would push that information up to? And then, how does the information get kind of disseminated out from there to the ISD level, to the Department of Education? I think the new School Safety Commission has a role in that as well. And then how does the information get to the legislators and then get all the way back down the other way to make sure that we're getting the job done as well? So as you read through those bills, you kind of look for those connecting dots that we're trying to make sure happen. Obviously, this is a ongoing process, and we learn as we go. And it's not easy to say, but we have to. We have to keep striving to get it right, get it better. And that's where I feel like the School Safety Commission can outlast Rep. Breen and I hope all of you sitting here as well, that there's something that continues to focus on this, continues to focus on the interaction with mental health and school safety and school security. We have other commissions as well, and they're doing amazing work. This one in particular is one that we've developed, and it's now been going on for over a year, and it has funding again. So my hope and view of that commission is that they would be those eyes and ears to continue to look at these subjects. It has experts on it. It has school psychologists on it. It has other people of experts in the field. Frankly, I'm a dairy farmer, and I know this is a new world for me to be in, but that's the case in the citizens' legislature. We all come here from different points of view, and that's a good thing, that we can bring those things together. But I'm not an expert by any means in this field. I have come to know a lot more about this field and understand it better, but I think the people on the School Safety Commission can help even know it better and give us as legislators things that they see we should be working on, whether it's in the mental health field or school security. So that's my passion, that's my dream, connecting the dots. School Safety Commission is part of that, and my pledge is to continue to work at this as long as I am able, and I'm grateful for the opportunity, even as heavy as the subject is.
Before we take questions, I just want to quickly say, again, thank you to Representative Weiss for what I think is an amazing K-12 budget. Things that are going to help mitigate violence you wouldn't think too much about, such as the free breakfast and lunch for every kid. Again, kids can't learn if they aren't physically and mentally safe. Making sure that their bellies are full is an important issue. Making sure that our teachers have programs and ways to cope with their jobs is also paramount. And this isn't limited to public schools either. All kids, whether they are in a public school, a private school, whether you are in the school for the deaf or blind, or if you're in a Montessori, they all deserve to be safe. And the other important thing about the commission is, again, we want it to outlast any of us. These are the experts in education. Otherwise, you have a bunch of legislators who may or may not have any experience in these areas sitting around making up their own laws, but yet we need to take some of our direction from these experts. And so we're grateful for that funding. And I welcome any questions.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you both for your work on this. I think at the end of the day, we can all agree that We want students, staff, students' families, anybody that goes in our schools, we want them to come home safe. That's not a partisan issue. So I want to thank you both for your work. We do have a couple of questions, and I'm going to start with Representative Glanville.
Thank you so much, and thank you both for being here and for the work for the commission and all the families and schools that have come forward to share their expertise and their perspective on this incredibly important topic. I was early in my career when Columbine happened as a teacher, and our school aligned perfectly with their demographics. And we started talking about this 25-ish years ago. So I'm really, really thrilled to be a part of bringing all this forward at this point. One question that I have real quick, and maybe I missed an email, but I'm wondering if we can get a little bit of an update on this report in terms of the current bill sponsors. I noticed the list in here, I think is from last year. And then also an update on the budget items that have been handled. That, again, were recommended in the list. If there's anything that has been done already, if we can get an update on those things. And then I also want to just say one more thing. I really, really appreciate your focus on factors outside the school. I often say a safe school is a school a kid doesn't need to be rescued from. And that starts with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that base one is, exactly what you're talking about, a roof over your head. It's those basic human needs. And the free breakfast and lunch is a perfect example of how we meet some of those needs, not only for our kiddos, but for our parents as we alleviate some of the stress of just getting kids off to school. Lower their grocery bills so that they're getting a little bit of relief during these times of inflation and things like that. So it might not seem like something that has that big of an impact, but it is. And we need to really keep our eye on those outside factors as well. So thank you for bringing that forward, and thank you again for all of your work.
Thank you, Rep. Glanville. Yes, the bills that are outlined in this are from the last term. All except for one have been dropped again, and it is a bipartisan package. Not all these bills necessarily are going to advance, and we are in the process of updating it with a lot of we've gotten a lot of feedback. So we want to make them as good as we can. And again, not all of them might advance, but there might be some bills that are added to the package. So, but I'll be happy to give you an update.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I swear every time I see you two, you got a bill in your hand and you're marking it up. So I can vouch for that one. Representative Green.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you both for being here. I'm actually going to echo what Representative Glanville said, was getting that list together. And also, is there an opportunity, or do you need an opportunity for those who sponsored those bills to get together in a work group format to just knock it out of get it done? Because I know I have a bill in that package that is hardening the schools physically. And did you want it to be the bill sponsor's responsibility to correct it, or are we working as a team on this package?
Definitely working as a team. I wish time wasn't passing so quickly, and I hold myself responsible for kind of, to some extent, where we're at. So that is something that we absolutely need to get on top of and get the bill sponsors together. Rep. Breen and I have been concentrating on meeting with interest groups, and you'll hear from some of them today, trying to get their feedback. But absolutely, we need to bring the group together.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do, Rep. Green, is just when we've centralized all the feedback, we're doing that, and then go to the individual bill sponsors and say, this is the feedback we've got, this is where the bill's at, what do you think? And then, but whether we do it as a whole or individually, either way, every bill sponsor is going to be feeling up to speed on what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you, and we're standing by waiting for orders.
Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks so much for doing this. We are unequivocally, without question, all in favor of school safety, and so we are on board. I just want to state, though, some superintendents have contacted me in my district, and they've just said, please, if you're going to have safety standards, make them simple enough to follow, because complex ones, they said even the current emergency operations standard guidelines are so complicated, they're not usable. So we got to keep this really simple, streamlined, and easy to effectively use in the schools. Thanks.
Okay, seeing no further questions, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Next up, we have two superintendents, both from Wayne County. We have Dr. Monica Merritt from Plymouth Canton Community Schools, and we also have Dr. John Dignan from Wayne Westland Community Schools. So Wayne Westland Public Schools or Wayne Westland Community Schools? Wayne Westland Community. I got it right the first time. All right.
All right, again, thank you, Mr. Chair. We're also constituents of Representative Colazar, and also to the committee. We appreciate this opportunity to come before you today and just talk about school safety. Again, I'm Dr. Monica Merritt, Superintendent of Plymouth Canton Community Schools, 16,400 students, approximately 2,500 adults. As superintendents, when we talk about schools and safety and well-being being our number one priority, we literally do not go to sleep at night until we know that every one of our students and every one of our staff has returned home safely, and then the cycle begins the next day. We're so appreciative of the legislation, the governor, the Rep. Weiss, in terms of this budget. It has been so supportive for school safety. When we think about these historic investments, for us in Plymouth Canton, some of the 97 funding, the 31 funding, we've been able to secure many things. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our district and that we're unique with our high school. If you don't know, we have 3 high schools on one campus. So we have over 6,000 students that we educate daily at our park in Plymouth Canton. Our students move from building to building every 55 minutes. So we really have to have a mindset of educating almost like a college campus and not a high school campus. So I appreciate really when we think about policy and legislation, things that are easy to follow, but also things that have to be tailored. It can't be a one size fits all. When we think about the investments that we've been able to make with this funding just alone, we this year are implementing an emergency management system. Unfortunately, we had an incident where we had a lockdown in our school about a year and a half ago. The lockdown didn't occur until about 2:30 in the afternoon. There was a report of a weapon on campus, a sighting of a weapon. It wasn't found. But through that time period, thinking about mass communications to our families who were very scared during that piece, thinking about students as they're crossing over between buildings every 55 minutes. Maybe some being outside on the park. How are we able to communicate with those students as they're transitioning? So we've had an opportunity to invest in call boxes for our students on the campus, emergency management system, visitors management systems for our students, training for our staff. When we think about our state, I'm very proud that we see education of the whole child when we're trying to prepare them academically, but also, as you've heard, we have to take care of their needs physically, psychologically, emotionally, and racially. And that includes mental health providers, the support of behavior specialists, nurses, counselors, and so we've been able to implement some of those things in our plan. For us, we've been able to utilize third parties for an assessment of our district, safety and security, SEC we were able to work with, and that's been very helpful. I would say challenges for us as superintendents is, of course, to be able to sustain these many investments that we've had in safety and security, and that's also going to be a funding issue. When we look at some of the particular challenges that we've had, and when we look at mapping, school mapping, that was a wonderful resource that we're able to use. It allows our law enforcement to get through our schools quickly in the event that there is an emergency type of situation, but those then come with a subscription as we move forward. So how do we continue to maintain the quality programs that have come our way? So when we think about policy around that, I guess that would be an ask. One more challenge that I would say in particular is some reporting requirements. Again, making sure that any policy that comes out is something that is easy to implement. Currently, we have 2 reporting crimes that we have to do for legislation. It's under Public Act 102. Schools are required to report incidents and crimes annually, and we're also required to report within 24 hours after an incident to MSP under the Revised Code Public Act 451. So maybe conversations around an opportunity to streamline those reporting mechanisms that would make that easier for law enforcement to work again with schools. One more piece or an ask that, if given an opportunity, I would talk about would be SROs. And we think about policy and legislation. They are so important to our schools. All schools don't have the ability to fund SROs. We do have 3 at our high school, and we have 1 through Plymouth Township that we do not fund. Actually, the township is funding that SRO. What would be important, though, we do know that research will show that there are some communities, Black and brown students, students with disabilities, that have some sensitivity to law enforcement. So the importance of really state-mandated MOUs as it relates to what are the roles and responsibilities of SROs within the school and the school administrator's responsibility. Is there training that could take place, such as implicit bias training, restorative practices training, SRO, NASRO training? So those would just be some asks that we have. Again, we're very appreciative of these investments. It is a priority to make sure that we can ensure all of our students and staff are safe, and having policy and legislation to help guide that effort is just so incredibly important.
Hi, my name's Dr. John Dignan. I'm the superintendent of Wayne Westland Community Schools. I want to thank the committee today for having us here to talk about this very important thing. The number one priority for any school district is student well-being, and I think you hear this theme a lot. And again, the focus has to be around the whole child. I want to thank Representative Weiss again for the funding. We actually were able to launch a school-based health clinic in one of our buildings this year because of it, so thank you. The other thing is we were also able the last 2 years to provide U of M Trails, which is social emotional learning, and train both staff and students. Just to give you a kind of a makeup of our district, we have about 9,500 students, 1,700 staff. We draw on 8 different communities. So again, it takes a lot of coordination between law enforcement entities, mental health providers, and whatnot. The meal-free breakfast and lunch helps with food insecurity, as people have touched on, because if a kid comes to school hungry, they can't learn. So again, as we minimize some of these barriers that get in the way of our students' learning, I think we're on the right track. Dr. Merritt talked about something that I think is high, is just the sustained funding of funding and resources. We made a lot of investments. I'm going to highlight 2. One is Care Solace, which focuses on mental health, which has been a game changer for our district. It kind of provides glue to both students and parents as well as the provider themselves, and it kind of connects everybody to make sure students are getting what they need. The other one is Lightspeed, that actually is a module that really kind of content filters classroom management and then provides alerts to our building crisis response team. So that's made a huge difference. I think the biggest thing is the more that I understand that every district is unique in its DNA, so the needs are different from every community. But if we can figure out standards that people can abide by, but also to consolidate regionally resources, whether it's okay to say mental health providers, law enforcement, and school districts coming together to figure out what's going to be in the best interest, because everyone doesn't have the financial means of kind of capturing some of these best practice. But I think if we can figure out ways to bring people to the table, that we're going to come up with better remedies across the board. The last thing is, I think, figuring out symposiums where we can capture our most important resource, which are our kids. Our students are incredible. And again, if we can help to train and capture their voice, I think that is probably one of the biggest investments that we can make. So on that note, I will turn the floor back over.
Anyone questions? I have one question. So when you find, and first of all, I want to thank Dr. Merritt for giving me a tour of the security procedures you have at the high school park. I know it's no small undertaking when you have 3 buildings with 2,000 kids in each building to do that. When you have evolving technology and we see things get more advanced, how challenging is it as a school district if you do adopt a different security measure from the one you have? Do you ever see any challenges in terms of keeping things you want to keep, getting new things? And I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit more about that.
I can say from our perspective, it has definitely been a challenge, just getting systems to talk. And so we had a 10-year plan in terms of safety and security, and technology changes so rapidly. So we invested in camera systems, and then PA systems weren't talking with the camera system. So it really is important to, I think, if we're looking at an overall plan, a coordinated plan to say what systems best work together within school districts, that would be something that would be a priority and helpful for us.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think she hit it right on the head. Just to figure out, because technology is changing so rapidly, what interfaces with one another, it makes it a lot easier. I don't think it changes the systems of EOPs, but just you run into some hiccups in trying to onboard people, and I think if it becomes more seamless, it's better for everyone.
Thank you. Any other questions? Representative Weiss.
Thank you, and I appreciate the thanks, but I didn't do it. Just me. A lot of us worked on it, so we have 58 members vote for it, and the Senate and the governor's office also worked incredibly hard on the budget, and so we're really happy with the outcome. I did want to ask you a little bit about the funding that was included for this upcoming budget, specifically for school mental health and school safety. There was a lot of debate about whether or not to combine those two or keep them separate. Ultimately, we decided to combine them to give districts more flexibility for districts that maybe have already invested a lot in the hardening and other school safety aspects to be able to use that money more towards mental health or vice versa, depending on their specific need. From an administrator's perspective, do you think that's helpful, or do you think it's better to have those separate?
For me, I would think that the combination works well for us. It allows for flexibility, as you said, that there's no one size fits all. And so having the flexibility based on what our needs are in our individual district and being able to utilize those funds to support, if we need more resources around mental health versus more security and cameras, things along those lines, it gave us that flexibility. So for me, keeping them combined has been helpful.
Again, I feel like a parrot. I'm going to echo what Dr. Merritt said. I think the flexibility, depending on what a district needs, it really helps you make those investments.
Thank you. Representative Johnson.
Thank you again. Appreciate the focus on mental health. I really think that's very needed. Appreciate that. But what's the plan to keep parents involved in that mental health paradigm going forward? Because, of course, if something happens at school and they're instructed one way and it's not followed up at home, vice versa, there's a conflict there and the child's caught in the middle. How do we include the parents in that?
Yeah, that's fine. I think in engaging our community, we've set up a lot of community forums around mental health, bring in some of our partners, whether it be Hagera or some of these other things. But having the messaging to make sure that our parents and guardians understand the resources that exist. Because I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of times people do not realize some of the resources that are available to them. And I think it's part of our job to get the message out and really market and communicate that to our school community. But our community forums, we started them last year, and they've been really successful because what's lifted there are some of the pitfalls or concerns that the parents or guardians have that then we can tackle. And if we didn't have the forums, we wouldn't know that they exist.
And so you're still guaranteeing parental consent for all the mental health going forward, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, with their school-based health clinics and stuff, they have to fill out forms for consent before the children are seen.
I will add we also keep that as a priority. We're really working hard in Plymouth Canton to remove the stigma behind mental health. We opened up an Office of Family and Student Engagement, and we are partnering with our local mental health providers, clinics to put on presentations for our families weekly. I agree with Dr. Dignan in terms of communication engagement being key. Unfortunately, in our area, we've had 3 completed suicides in the last 2 years. And so really elevating the importance of having conversations and getting access to mental health, and it's okay to talk about, and so supporting and wrapping our arms around our parents and our community and making sure that they know that support is available to them.
Thank you. Representative Wagella.
Hi. Hello, Superintendent Dignam. By the way, that's my superintendent over there. Maybe this is a tough question, but I really think it's an important part of the discussion. Schools today still are one of the safest places for kids to be. Over 99% of homicides involving school-age children occur somewhere other than school. So while we have these discussions about wanting to make school quote-unquote safer, which I think all of us agree that is something we need to do, how do we make sure that we balance that safety and security without militarizing our schools and making sure that these are still places that focus on learning, that have enough resources for mental health, et cetera, and just kind of looking for some thoughts on that from the superintendent perspective.
Definitely agree that we never want to make our schools appear as if they're prisons, and so we have to work hard. I'll even think at our high school, we've had many families that think, why don't you use metal detectors? But that's not the environment that we want as an academic environment. So we think outside of the box. We were able to bring on a K9 ammunitions detections dog, and his handler is a part of our staff. He also doubles as a therapy dog. And so making sure that we have supports in place in a creative way that don't make students feel as if, again, they're going to school in a prison. So it's definitely a balance. When we think about schools, we really think about the importance of positive relationships with our staff. When things are happening outside in the community, to your point, they still have an impact, and that carries over into the school environment. And so making sure that they have a trusted adult there that they can talk to and share, and again, get support that they may have. We have so many things that are beyond our locus of control, but they still are impacting our students' daily lives. So keeping that balance to make sure that first and foremost, we are an academic environment where they can report feeling safe in all of these areas.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just knocking down the stigma. Again, it's all about relationships. So even when we have our SROs reaching out and seeing law enforcement possibly in a different light, bringing guest speakers in, one of the things Dr. Merritt touched on that we face a lot of times is the stigma around mental health, of really breaking that down with different aspects of our community. I think the more that we make it seamless and welcoming and inclusive, the better it is for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Churches.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we should be mindful of some of the vocabulary we're using, even the word hardening. That alone was like, school shouldn't be a place that is hard, right? It should be a warm and welcoming environment. So to me personally, that vocabulary is a little off-putting. I was an elementary school teacher for 10 years, and I know that districts have different accessibilities to student resource officers, and these can look different. I had a police officer who I had a great relationship work with me in my classroom, and it took a lot of work to know how to work with kids. So I wonder, is there like a certain program that SRO officers go through? Is it unified throughout the state? And do they learn things like restorative practices? And how long is the training? How are they taught to interact with different age groups of kids? Is it different for lower elementary students or secondary students, and where do they get certified? Is it a certification process? These are questions that I'm not really sure of.
So there is from their national organization, National Association of School Resource Officers, they have training that they can go through, but it is definitely not mandated across the state. That would be something that would be very helpful for us. Locally, we have our police chiefs that have been working with us, and they allow their SROs to actually engage in the same training that we have in school. So we're able to provide restorative practices. They work side by side with our school administrators, with our teachers to receive some of the training that I talked about, implicit bias training, working with students. So there's a different level, as you said, of conversation that happens with second grade versus conversations that they have with their high school students. So making sure that they have that opportunity to receive that training and support and are really treated as a part of the team. But I definitely think it would be a priority if that is something that we could look at legislating in terms of like an MOU to say, what is that training? What are those roles and responsibilities? And how does that differ at different grade levels? That would be very helpful.
There's not a, as Dr. Mayer touched on, there's not a coordinated curriculum or anything or necessary standard between districts or even grade levels. And I think it would be a great idea to kind of move in that direction if we could. Yeah. Because a lot of times people don't know what they don't know, and I think it would be very beneficial for the kids and everybody involved.
Yeah, behavior management is one of the hardest things as a teacher. If you don't have control of your classroom, you can't really get anything else done. So I think that is something that we really need to look at more. So hearing that that's a need and then seeing how we can work with you to make that so they have enough experience to work with kids who experience big emotions.
Okay, we're going to take one more question on this one because we have a lot of people that have come a long way. So Representative Green, you'll round it out here.
It was about, thank you for coming, the SROs. Do we teach our children how to interact with the SROs?
Yes, we do. So in terms of that relationship, again, our focus in Plymouth Canton is around the positive relationship building. And so making sure that the law enforcement, our SROs, are not just seen as someone that comes in a reactive way, but they truly are a part of our daily operations. They are part of the school team, and so included in every aspect. And we have programs that are specific around that teaching. So, for example, I referenced in second grade, we have an elementary program that's called Teams. So there's really some pre-work that's done with the students before the officers are then integrated within the classroom, and they have an opportunity to engage with students. So it has to work both ways in terms of that.
That's followed statewide, though?
I do not. I don't think that there's anything consistent across the state.
Okay. Thank you both for being here. Really appreciate you taking the time, and thank you, committee members, for questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you again for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, next up, we have founding members of the organization 42 Strong, who will have a slideshow presentation. So I would like to welcome them up at this time. We have Scott Claxton and Buck, is it Meir? I knew I said it.
The wall. Yep. We don't have a slideshow, but I think we distributed some materials to the members.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Wish we did, though. That'd be cool. Good morning. I'm Buck Meir, president of 42 Strong.
I'm Scott Claxton. I'm the program director at 42 Strong.
Thank you, Representative Colazar, for having us. Good morning, everybody. 42 Strong was created 2 weeks after the Oxford High School shooting that took place on November 30th, 2021, to honor our son, Tate Meir, who was stolen from us on that tragic day. Hannah St. Juliana, Justin Schilling, and Madison Baldwin were also stolen from us. 7 others were shot, and a whole school was terrorized. I'd like to take a moment to talk about my son, Tate, the heartbeat of 42 Strong. Tate was an incredible young man who believed in an ancient, selfless concept. Pour yourself into others and create a we are all in this together culture. Tate was a natural, selfless leader. Tate was a mentor to his peers. Tate loved his family fiercely and was never too cool to hang out with me or his mom, Sherry, or take advice from his older brothers, Trent and Ty. Tate was fearless, but not in the way our society defines fearless these days. He was never afraid to take risk or stand up for what was right in fear of being judged or in fear of retribution. Tate was never afraid to be judged by his peers. Tate had an incredibly profound impact on everybody he came into touch with. Tate inspired us to act on this innate trait of selflessness and togetherness to drive much needed change in our world. With that, we decided to start our peer mentoring foundation, 42 Strong. Our slogan for 42 Strong is Trust, Love, Build. And I want to talk about that slogan. On a cold, rainy Friday fall night, after a round 1 playoff win over Clarkston, Tate was interviewed on the field by a local media outlet. The interviewer asked him to talk about his thoughts on the game and the season turnaround after starting 1-3. He said this: "In the rain, this is where we live. Rain is just like Oxford football. Tough, muddy. Everything about us is tough. We didn't quit. We came back. We grinded. Worked every day. We trust each other. We love each other. And we just started building, week by week. And here we are." Let's take a minute and talk about these impactful words from a 16-year-old young man who was wise beyond his years. Trust. You can't get anything done without trusting each other. It's the foundation of our country, of our world. It's the foundation. Trust. Love. Love is shown by looking out for each other and our community. We have each other's backs. Building. This is the easy part. This is what happens when trust is earned and we love each other. What our family wants is for no other family to be engulfed in the hell that we are going through. We want evidence-based legislation implemented that will address the underlying upstream well-being issues our kids are faced with today. With that, I want to hand it over to Scott Claxton, our program director, to talk about what we have learned from our research and what we are advocating for.
Thanks, Buck. Good morning, everybody. So our program is a peer mentoring program in the Oxford community. The first year of our program was, again, right after November 30th. We had 250 kids in our first year. This year, we now have 450 kids in our program, all from the Oxford community. We're doing what we can in our community to make a difference. I want to share some things we've learned about school violence on our journey through our program. In 2010, there were 15 school shootings nationwide. In 2023, 340 are projected if we remain on the same pace. We've learned that the path to suicide and homicide are paved with depression, anxiety, and loneliness. We've learned that the path to suicide and homicide are essentially the same path with a small fork at the end. According to the 2021 U.S. Surgeon General's advisory, high school students reporting persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness increased by 40% from 2009 to 2019. An even more damning statistic is during the same period, students seriously considering suicide increased by 36%. As of 2019, nearly 37% of high school students reporting having persistent feelings of loneliness, which is a 97% increase since 2012. This trend is not going away. We can all wish that these statistics were not true, but they are. Hope is not a course of action. Some information from the Violence Project that I'd like to share. 87% of school shooters were in a noticeable state of crisis prior to the event. Only 30% of these folks had previous mental health counseling of any kind, and only 5% of all mass shootings are related to severe mental illness. 78% of school shooters leak their plan in advance, and 80% are suicidal prior to an incident. 46% had some sort of school disciplinary record, and 91% are current or former students. It's always almost an inside job. And the number one symptom, typically speaking, is a sudden change of behavior from the individual baseline. I say that to say this. These statistics give us the clues we need for schools to begin dealing with the problem they are now faced with. They didn't ask for it, but here it is. The world has changed and continues to do so. Our schools must respond, own, and adapt to these changes. Our legislature must implement comprehensive, systematic, ongoing responses to this new reality. Again, it's not going away. Our advocacy positions are based on evidence-based practices. These are things in our research that we believe can move the needle and tie directly back to the statistics that I just mentioned. The first is implementation of peer mentoring programs. The second is the implementation of well-being surveys. The third is school safety and support software, and I'll address each of these individually. The first, peer mentoring programs. According to the CDC and Mentor.org, mentoring serves as a critical violence prevention strategy by offering flexible, broad support to young people on a wide variety of their needs. I can share that we've seen this firsthand as we've worked to rebuild the Oxford community. We are advocating for funding for both school-based and community-based organizations that serve this need. Number 2, well-being surveys and corresponding interventions. Conducting regular well-being surveys can greatly benefit schools by providing them valuable data on students' mental health and well-being needs. This information allows schools to identify where targeted interventions are necessary, prioritize limited resources, and ensure that students receive the support that they require. The surveys of all staff and students are supported by the American Psychological Association, the National Center for Education Statistics, the National Institute for Mental Health, the Center for Health and Healthcare in Schools, and the U.S. Department of Education. We are advocating for the statewide adoption of well-being surveys administered bi-monthly and for the resulting information to be used by counseling staff to make appropriate interventions. Lastly, student safety and support software. Significant causes for concern that a student's entering crisis are departure from their personal baselines. As mentioned before, 80% of students that end up causing violence, suicide, or homicide are in crisis. So significant cause for concern are students' departure from their personal baselines in attendance, behavior, participation in activities, a disciplinary record, as well as educator observations. These indicate the increased likelihood of entering crisis. This is our time to get involved early. The ability exists now to provide our school mental health staff tools to intervene when crisis starts. We must make these interventions as early as possible to address the underlying upstream well-being problems that lead to homicide or suicide, or just kids having a bad go, right? That's important. We are advocating for the research into the appropriate software package, evaluation, selection. This would include funding and personnel for schools to adopt and implement. So in summary, our advocacy positions are peer mentoring programs, number 1, well-being surveys, number 2, and school safety and support software, number 3. Lastly, we must act now and have the foresight and commitment to sustain this effort. Long-term challenges demand long-term thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you. Oh, sorry.
Yep, one more quick thing, sorry. While working on these bills, we have some requests. You all should have a Trust, Love, Build bracelet in front of you. Please wear that to keep Oxford, our kids' well-being, Tate, Hannah, Justin, and Madison at the forefront. Second, we are all accountable to create a better future for the kids in this state. We are doing something at 42 Strong. What are you going to do? Remember Tate's words, trust, love, build. Build trust by working with each other in good faith. Show love and care for our kids in this great state through your actions and how you can work together to get this done. Work together to build a safer, brighter future for our kids. 4, be fearless, just like Tate was. Have tough conversations with each other. Be uncomfortable and work through it for our kids. Lastly, if another school shooting took place tomorrow, how would we feel about the lack of progress since the Oxford shooting? The clock is ticking. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. Mr. Mayor, I don't have to tell you that there's so many people across the state that you have never met whose thoughts have never left you in the Oxford community. And I just want to also commend you on turning this into advocacy as well. It takes a great amount of courage, and thank you for being here again. We do have one question. I'm going to limit it to one only because we do have several groups still that wish to testify. So Representative Green.
Well, and I thank you again. I echo the chair's comments. So I can get right to my question. You, Mr. Claxton, you gave some really statistics that I've never heard before, and I think it's really important that that's distributed. Would you be able to have access to those statistics that you shared?
So there's a document that was distributed this morning that has information on our organization. Many of those statistics are in there. The ones that are not in there can be found in going to theviolenceproject.org, who have done the most research and statistical analysis of school shootings.
Thank you.
And then additionally, please reach out to me and I will point you in the direction of all of this. And anybody that has further questions, we'd like to stay involved. So.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time and for being here. Mr. Mujib.
Yeah, lastly, we got some posters here. I'm not sure if I got enough for everybody, but I think we got 12 or 13 there. If you could take one, we'll put them over there, and I'll put it up in your office. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Bob Kefchin representing the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. And thank you for having me today and giving me the opportunity to present on MASSP's school safety priorities. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bob Kefchin. I'm the Associate Director of Government Relations with the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals. MASSP is a nonprofit professional association. We represent roughly 1,800 middle and high school principals, assistant principals, and other building administrators. This handout that you have in front of you summarizes the priorities that I'm going to present on today. Beginning in the spring of 2022, following the tragedy at Oxford High School, MASSP began the work of developing policy priorities specific to school safety. That process included input from our regionally elected board of directors and a full membership survey. In approaching this work, we recognized that different communities might have different needs and different priorities, but we were trying to identify what commonalities existed and where MASSP could have the biggest impact in our advocacy. We asked our board and our members not just what their priorities were around school safety, but where their district was in terms of school safety implementation and what support they felt they needed the most. What we found was that the answers to both the questions, what should our priorities be, and where do you need the most support, were the same. The 5 items you see outlined on the left side of this handout, numbers 1 through 5, were the top 5 answers to both questions, which made it pretty clear where secondary principals' priorities lie. The top 3 priorities are all related to mental health supports. Secondary principals prioritized expanding access to school mental health professionals, on-site behavioral health services, and community supports like community mental health. They also prioritized funding for positive climate and culture initiatives like anti-bullying work, DEI, restorative practices, and peer mentoring, and a comprehensive threat assessment protocol. I'd like to highlight a couple of things about these priorities. First, mental health is not just an MASSP school safety priority, but something our members identified as an overall policy priority for this legislative session. The support in the last 2 school aid budgets in the form of things like flexible grants for school mental health, paid internship programs for school mental health professionals, and school-based health centers are an important step, and we thank you for that. But as you heard earlier from other people speaking, to truly address this issue, schools need ongoing support, not just one-time dollars. What principals said they needed more than anything are trained school mental health professionals, and you can't, or at least shouldn't, hire people with one-time dollars. Also, the work of supporting the mental health of students and staff can't just fall to the schools. We need community support and a network of providers outside the school. The second thing I'd like to point out is the quote you see on the right side of our handout. We captured this during one of our board input sessions, but it summarizes a point I've heard again and again as I've gone around the state doing legislative updates and meeting with principal groups. That is, principals want a level of standardization when it comes to school safety. things like common terminology and definitions among first responders and common response protocols. Principals generally want local control when it comes to things like curriculum and assessment, where they are the experts. But when you're a principal in Utica and your district spans 7 municipalities, you need everyone to be on the same page in the event of an emergency. Finally, I want to touch on the percentages you see noted in the bottom right corner of the handout. Anticipating that we might see legislation that sought to impose state mandates on schools, we asked members what they thought about some possible mandates. 75% of our survey respondents said they would support a mandate for all schools to have a basic level of physical security, provided the state funded that mandate. 80% said they would support a mandate for school administrators to be trained in threat assessment, as long as the state provided funding or free training. I was honestly surprised by these answers, since mandates are not usually something that educators support, but I think it highlights the seriousness with which principals approach the topic of school safety. Also, please note that this high level of support was contingent on full state funding, not unfunded mandates. Thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you. Will you be available after committee to answer any questions of members, just because we are running low on time?
Sure thing.
All right, thank you so much. If members do have questions, feel free after we get through committee. Next up, we will hear from Jill Lemond of Evolve Technologies, and also we may have somebody, I think it's via Zoom. And is there anybody else here from that organization? Nope. Okay.
Hi, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Just because of the technology, I want to be sure everyone can hear me all right. Am I at a good volume for everyone?
We can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. So my name is Jill Lemond. I was an assistant superintendent in Oxford Community Schools during the tragedy, and then was given all safety and security measures for the district post-incident. And I just want to commend the committee. Thank you for inviting the families into the conversation. I think it's so important to have their voice. I'm always thinking of Hannah, Justin, Madison, and Tate when I'm out in the field doing work now. I do work for Evolve Technology, but I want to be very careful. This is not a sales pitch. This is not about a product. This is about a problem that we have across the country. It's not a Michigan problem. It's a United States issue that schools don't have the support or the knowledge base or the funding to do what they need to do for safety and security. And, you know, I had this privilege of taking over that role in Oxford and learned a great deal and took that information and really took that impact that I felt I was able to make to Evolve Technology. And Evolve is an advanced weapons screening product. But like I said, you know, the technology is not important if you don't have the people and the process and the policies in place to really use this technology effectively. And that's what I'm able to do, is go around the country. I'm in Dallas right now at a security expo, hearing from every district the same things that we heard, you know, this morning throughout testimony. People don't have enough resources, and they don't necessarily know what to do or have the professional acumen within the district to get that information. And so, you know, security assessments and really having almost like a doctor coming in and giving you a script for what you need to do is so important as part of a comprehensive school safety plan. And what we try and work with schools is looking at their campus and trying to understand where they may have weaknesses and strengths, and how possibly weapon screening and possibly not might be the best solution for them. And we have been able to help some Michigan schools. What I want to share with you is quite personal, actually. It's that in that role, as I'm standing in Oxford High School, shaking after, you know, hanging up with 911 myself on the call, within maybe an hour or 2 hours of the 12:51 first gunshot, my phone was going off as vendor upon vendor saw safety in my title and contacted me. It was overwhelming. It was quite honestly disgusting, the sales tactics and practices out there in the field. And it was really disheartening at a time where I was also enduring trauma and trying to lead. And so what I would compel the committee to do is really look at different types of products. And those companies try to sell to us educators and school leaders and district leaders something that in many cases they cannot provide, that they don't have the ability to provide us. And, you know, there is a Safety Act designation through DHS. We do have that at Evolve, and there are several other companies that are very high quality companies who have gone through some of this rigorous testing. But it's very overwhelming for schools when every product is coming to you and they know that we're getting funding, and I hope we're going to get more funding. And when that happens, it's like sharks circling in the water. We need to know what is good for school safety. And a lot of times it's not the fancy bells and whistles, it's threat assessment procedures, it's bringing in a professional for mental health. And how can we work with comprehensive safety experts to really determine the needs of each unique district? We heard about the different types of campuses. That's a completely different 3 high school, open community campus to secure than maybe one of our more traditional high schools. And how do we take that into account, and what do we do? And so, I'm honored to be part of the conversation and to be a resource here in Michigan. But I'm taking everything we learned in Oxford with me and trying to learn more every day. Just humbled to be here and will be open to questions. In terms of the actual Evolve product, we work with, like I said, many different types of vendors, but Evolve screens right now about 250,000 students each day, and we're in over 650 schools across the country. We're also in more than half the NFL stadiums and in a lot of other public places. But I think that it's an excellent use case in schools for children. And what we saw in Oxford, they actually donated the systems to us in Oxford. And we saw that kids were able to look at adults and make those adult connections. The U.S. Secret Service report in 2019 said the #1 way to avert a violent act was to have positive adult connections in a school setting. And so you can't forget the people in this process. It's not all about technology, it's about people, and allowing the educators to go back to what we know they're very good at doing, which is connecting with kids. Our system has a tablet, and as you're walking in each morning, the AI technology is doing the heavy lifting, and it's allowing you to make eye contact with kids, to welcome them into the learning environment, to thank them for coming to school that day, as we have attendance issues across the country. And then if the system sees something that looks like a weapon, it's going to have that student searched, have a secondary search. And so then we need those resources to actually do that search and do it well with integrity and with the training necessary. And so again, just happy to be here today. Don't want to push a product on you, but just want you to know that there are a lot of companies out here trying to partner with schools, and there are a lot of bad guys. There are a lot of companies that are snake oil salespeople that I personally had to endure, and it was really disheartening. I think the more you can do to partner with schools and help them have a matrix or some way of determining what is a quality product when it comes to school safety, I think that's something that's really missing in this space. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lamont. Appreciate it. Because you are via Zoom, we do have one question that we're going to take, because I know obviously after committee availability it can be difficult. So with that, Representative Wagella.
Thank you. So trying to figure out how to phrase my question, but it's kind of twofold. One, I am curious to the cost of these devices that use, my understanding is AI software to detect weapons and so forth. But then secondly is the accuracy. This morning and last night I had a chance to read an Intercept article called or titled "Unarmed AI Tries and Fails to Detect Weapons in Schools," and it talks about the technology that your company provides not working in certain school districts, and really puts into question the accuracy of it. So kind of twofold here is, what is the cost for a school district? And then I guess looking for reassurance on the accuracy of the product.
Absolutely. Thank you for those questions. So when it comes to cost, there's plenty of different opportunities for schools to purchase. We know some schools have one-time grant funding, and so we can help them with like a hardware purchase with a subscription. Typically, we work with schools on a lease basis, so it's not an easy answer, but in general, for one system, a single lane system, and we also have a dual lane model, it's typically somewhere between $25,000 to $30,000 a year per system for schools. And that software is constantly updating, and actually 4 times a year minimally, we do a large software upgrade. And to your point, the system is always learning and always getting better. So if Glock comes out with a new handgun, we better learn to detect it. And similarly, we're trying to ignore those everyday metallic items. If Apple comes out with a new iPhone, we want to teach the system not to alert on that. And so when it comes to accuracy, our system is fantastic, but it does have different sensitivity settings. It's a little bit more of a nuanced conversation, but we allow schools and other spaces to determine that sensitivity setting and are very transparent with them about what will and what will not be alerted on at each sensitivity setting. So I think that has to do more with understanding their threat landscape, understanding their particular unique environment and what it is they're looking for. Most of our schools are telling us they want something that's very accurate, that's great at detecting weapons, but that's not creating this prison-like feel and this TSA-like experience for kids when they're walking in each day. Like we said, the social emotional learning, the mental health of students, it needs to be paramount. And so how can we use the technology to add to that plan, to add to that mental health awareness, and to make kids feel seen and not introduce unintended bias into the conversation? If when the knee-jerk reaction after Oxford, a lot of people in the community suggested metal detectors, and there were a great portion of the community who didn't want those either. And so I did quite a bit of research on metal detection, and I don't know if you're familiar with that research. It's an 80-something-year-old technology, but metal detectors are objectively not very good for kids. Minimal to no impact on violent incidents, which is the problem you're trying to solve, but then also has a negative impact on students' mental health and well-being, and makes them feel like they aren't safe, that it affects and impacts their perceptions of safety. And so everything we're doing here, we're keeping that in mind. And how are we different? And most of our school environments, not all, but most of our school environments, the alert rate is sub 10%. So that means that 90% or more of students are just walking through the system and making a positive adult interaction in the morning. We have panels that are personalizable. So schools will have the Wildcat up there in Oxford, or whatever logo they want. We've had kids do coloring contests to design the panels. And just one other point, which is not to your question, but since I have a moment, I really hope that the committee is considering student voice in this conversation. I don't see any students today. I don't know that you haven't spoken with them. But that was one of the most amazing things that I was able to do post-incident, was get students together and actually hear from them about how they feel and what would make them feel safer and lower their anxiety each day.
Thank you, and absolutely agree with you on student voice. I was a teacher for 12 and a half years and echo those sentiments as well. As I said, this is just one part of a conversation that has been had for a while and will continue to be had. Thank you for being here with us today. Finally, we will be hearing from Centegix, and I know we are also being joined on Zoom by Lori Aldef. I hope I said that right. And anyone that also come on up. And this will be our last presentation of the day.
Good morning, Michigan Education Committee. Thank you for granting me the opportunity to speak before you today. My name is Lori Alhadef, and I stand before you not only as a grieving parent, but president of the nonprofit organization Make Our Schools Safe and the chair of the Broward County School Board, but also as an advocate for a crucial piece of legislation known as Alyssa's Law. It is an honor to address this esteemed committee, and I'm here to urge you to consider the implementation of Alyssa's Law in the great state of Michigan. Alyssa's Law is named after my beloved daughter, Alyssa Alhadef, who has tragically lost her life, shot 8 times during her English classroom at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida on February 14, 2018. Alyssa was my vibrant, intelligent, caring young woman who lost her life and left an irreparable void in my heart and the hearts of many other parents and spouses who lost their loved one that day. Alyssa's Law aims to prevent such devastating tragedies from occurring by mandating the installation of silent panic alarms in every K-12 public school classroom across the state. These panic alarms are directly connected to law enforcement agencies, allowing for an immediate and coordinated response to threats within our school. Time is of the essence in these emergencies, and Alyssa's Law recognizes this by ensuring that teachers and staff have the tools they need to alert authorities swiftly. We cannot afford to waste precious moments in the face of danger. These panic alarms can make all the difference, enabling our schools to respond effectively, protect our students, and potentially save lives. Furthermore, Alyssa's Law promotes transparency and accountability. It's important to have these drills and testing of these panic alarms, ensuring that they will remain operational and effective. This level of preparedness is crucial in our commitment to safeguarding the future of Michigan's children. I understand that implementing such measures requires funding, and I urge you to consider the long-term value they bring. The safety and well-being of our students are paramount, and the cost of not taking action far exceeds the financial investment needed to protect them. The lives of our children should be priceless. Moreover, Alyssa's Law has already proven successful in other states, passed in the state of New Jersey, Florida, Texas, Tennessee, New York, and funding allocated for panic buttons in Oregon. Alyssa's Law needs to be a standard level school safety protection in every school across this country, and I believe it can serve as a beacon of hope for Michigan. As parents, educators, and lawmakers, it is our shared responsibility to create an environment in which our children can learn and grow without fear. Alyssa's Law is not just a piece of legislation, it is a lifeline for our students, a shield against danger, and a testament to our commitment to their safety. In closing, I implore you to support Alyssa's Law to vest in the safety of Michigan schools and to honor the memory of my daughter, Alyssa, and all those who were tragically lost their lives in school shootings. Let us stand united in the determination to protect our children and ensure that no parent has to endure the pain and loss that I have experienced. Thank you so much for your time and consideration, and together we can make Michigan schools safer for generations to come. Thank you.
My name is Will Fullerton. I oversee government affairs at a company called Centegix. We are focused on safer spaces, and it's one of my honors. Lori's also, what she didn't mention, is the president of the Broward County School Board in Florida, and so she's taken time out of their meeting that's currently going on. And it is one of the honors of my life to work with Lori and pass this legislation across in state capitals. It was just reintroduced at the federal level. And as we talk about response, Alyssa's Law is kind of a critical piece as far as school safety standards are concerned. Beyond the extreme emergencies, it provides values for teachers on the everyday. There are emergencies every day on every campus in this country. Whether a kid's choking on a rock on the playground, boys are fighting in the hallway, or a custodian's having a cardiac event. And so we hope to continue this conversation and work side by side with all of you as we go through debate school safety standards in the state of Michigan.
Thank you. And also to Ms. Alhadeff, same thing I said to Mr. Meir. Really just the whole country was with you, and just want to commend you on turning just a horrific tragedy into advocacy. It just takes a tremendous amount of courage. So thank you. And thank you for being here as well. We are up against it on time. If we haven't gotten anyone, I hope we will also hear from them in the future. But with that, Representative Churches moves to excuse absent members without objection so ordered, and there being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned. Thank you.